Ура!
Vladimir Putin's sustained dominance over Russian politics stands as one of the most remarkable phenomena of the modern era, particularly in a world where political careers often fluctuate and fade within a few years. Since first assuming the presidency in 1999, he has outlasted 5 American presidents and most European prime ministers. His tenure, now spanning more than 2 decades, has reshaped both Russia's identity and its relationship with the world. Longevity in leadership is not simply a function of political power. It is a reflection of adaptability, perception, and the ability to control narrative and institutions. In that sense, Putin has become a case study in sustained authority. To understand what makes him one of the tallest leaders of our time, one must look at him through 2 lenses: the Western perception of an authoritarian strongman and the broader global view of a strategic survivor. When Putin first appeared on the political scene in the late 1990s, Russia was reeling from economic collapse, corruption, and internal fragmentation. The Soviet Union had fallen less than a decade earlier, and the transition to capitalism had left much of the population disillusioned. Under Boris Yeltsin, Russia seemed directionless, weak internationally and unstable domestically. Putin's initial appeal lay in his promise of stability and discipline. A former KGB officer with a reputation for efficiency, he embodied control in a country exhausted by chaos. His early years focused on centralizing authority, restoring state functions, and reasserting the Kremlin's dominance over regional oligarchs. Within a few years, average Russians saw tangible results. Salaries and pensions began to stabilize, the economy grew under high oil prices, and Moscow regained its confidence on the global stage. The man who spoke little but acted decisively soon came to symbolize national recovery. One cannot understand Putin's durability without examining the system he built. He restructured Russia's political and administrative hierarchy into a vertical of power, concentrating decision-making in the presidency. Putin gradually brought regional governors, the judiciary, and media outlets under federal control. This centralization was accompanied by a deliberate cultivation of personal loyalty among elites, a structure similar to what earlier European monarchs or modern Asian leaders employed. By aligning the interests of the security services, energy sector, and state bureaucracy, Putin ensured that his survival was tied to that of the entire governing system. At the same time, he mastered the use of national narrative. State media portrayed him not just as a president, but as a guardian of Russian identity, a defender of sovereignty against Western encroachment. In a nation that values strong authority and historical continuity, this image resonated deeply. From the Western viewpoint, Putin's rule represents the antithesis of liberal democracy. Analysts in Washington, Brussels, and London often describe him as a strongman who dismantled democratic institutions, curtailed press freedom, and suppressed dissent. Critics argue that his longevity stems not from genuine popularity, but from control over media, electoral manipulation, and repression of opposition figures. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 further solidified his image in Western media as a revisionist autocrat bent on restoring a sphere of influence reminiscent of the Soviet era. To many Western observers, Putin embodies a broader challenge to the liberal order established after 1991. A leader who seeks to replace cooperation with confrontation and diplomacy with coercion. This framing is not purely ideological. It reflects genuine concern over the erosion of democratic norms and the destabilization of Europe's security framework. Examining the Western narrative also reveals its bias. It often overlooks the domestic logic that sustains Putin's power and the global shifts that have made his approach resonate outside the West. Viewed more broadly, Putin's endurance represents a form of strategic realism. From Moscow's perspective, the post-Cold War era was not an age of peace, but of humiliation. NATO expanded eastward, Western influence reached Russia's borders, and Moscow's geopolitical space shrank dramatically. In that setting, Putin presented himself as a restorer of state sovereignty, dismissing Western governance models and advocating for what he termed sovereign democracy, a system that embodies Russian traditions rather than Western ideals. This argument found sympathy in parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, where leaders saw echoes of their struggles against Western dominance. Moreover, Putin has proven adept at playing asymmetric geopolitics. Russia's economy is smaller than that of the United States or China, but through energy leverage, military capability, and diplomatic maneuvering, he has managed to keep Russia central to global affairs. Whether in Syria, Africa, or the Arctic, Moscow remains a decisive actor, not because of sheer power, but because of calculated influence. Few leaders survive for decades without evolving. Putin's ability to adapt, both tactically and rhetorically, has been key to his longevity. In the early 2000s, he presented himself as a modernizer, partnering with the West. In the 2010s, he became the patriot defender, challenging Western double standards. By the 2020s, he recast himself as the civilizational leader, defending Russia's cultural and spiritual identity against what he frames as moral decay in the West. This evolution allowed him to remain relevant across generations of Russian voters. His personal discipline, athleticism, controlled demeanor, and visible energy reinforces the image of a tireless leader. Even the symbolism of his physical stature, often highlighted in contrast to shorter Western presidents, contributes to a narrative of dominance and resilience. Putin's figurative height lies as much in projection as in policy. Compared with Western leaders, who rotate frequently and must balance coalition politics, Putin's continuity grants him an almost imperial presence. European politics over the past 2 decades has seen fragmentation, short-lived governments in Italy, leadership turnovers in the UK, and shifting coalitions in Germany and France. The European Union's consensus-driven mechanisms often make decisive leadership appear weak. However, there have been tall leaders in the same system in the past. Against that backdrop, Putin's consistency stands out. He is not merely a participant in history, but a constant through it. Even in the United States, presidents face 4-year election cycles and partisan paralysis. In contrast, Putin projects decisiveness and endurance, traits that appeal to society's longing for predictability in an age of volatility. Western commentators often portray the war in Ukraine as the moment of Putin's global isolation. Sanctions have cut many economic ties, and diplomatic channels have narrowed. Yet, on a global scale, Russia has not been completely ostracized. China, India, Iran, and a number of African and Latin American countries have kept or strengthened their ties with Moscow because they see Russia as a counterbalance to Western power. Within Europe, too, cracks exist. Hungary's government remains friendly, Slovakia and segments of Italy show pragmatism, and U.S. political polarization may shift future policy directions. In that sense, the notion of total isolation is misleading. Putin has not been expelled from the world system. He has simply repositioned Russia within a different network of alliances, one that values sovereignty and multipolarity over ideological alignment. None of this endurance comes without cost. Russia's political system has grown less pluralistic, its economy more dependent on state direction, and its global reputation more divisive. The war in Ukraine has brought immense human and material losses. Nonetheless, despite these challenges, Putin's position within Russia remains remarkably stable, partly due to control mechanisms, but also because of genuine national consensus that Russia must stand firm against external pressure. This dynamic makes him not merely a politician, but a symbol of national continuity, one whose authority is intertwined with Russia's own sense of identity. To call Putin one of the tallest leaders of the 21st century is not to praise or condemn him, but to recognize his exceptional durability in a volatile era. He represents a model of leadership rooted in control, resilience, and historical continuity, one that contrasts sharply with the transient, consensus-driven politics of the liberal West. From a Western perspective, he is the archetype of the authoritarian challenge, a figure who thrives on confrontation and suppresses pluralism. From a broader geopolitical viewpoint, he is a leader who mastered the art of survival in a world that rarely forgives weakness. Whether history ultimately remembers him as a stabilizer or a disruptor, Vladimir Putin's two-decade rule has already reshaped the global balance of power. In an era marked by short-lived governments and ideological fatigue, Vladimir Putin's unwavering endurance sets him apart among the leaders of his time, both literally and symbolically. If you think the video was informative, please like, subscribe, and share. Please also take membership of the channel to encourage us